Commanders 27, Giants 22. Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. Giants fall to 2-7, and Justin, it's been a while since I've seen you, and it's also been a while since the Giants last lost, which was the last time I saw you in that win over the Seahawks in that New York City bar. How you doing?
Oh, hi, Bobby Skinner. Yeah. There used to be one thing that was true in our lives, the nice little slogan of, even if the Giants are a bad team, there's death, there's taxes, but the Giants do take care of the Commanders, and that's unfortunately not true anymore. This is the second time in 4 years that we've been swept by the Washington Commanders. 2020 left hand up, who are we? I was saying that today. It's very addicting. 2021 we were swept. This year we are officially swept, and then the last time before that, 2011. So we had a nice little decade-long run of dominating those Commanders. And it seems
2011 won the Super Bowl.
We did.
Rex Grossman was, they weren't Commanders. They were the Redskins at that time. Rex Grossman's team. Justin, overall with this game, offensively, I actually thought they performed pretty well. Outside of the, Chris Hubbard's, strip sack screen. We'll talk about that play, especially the officiating on that, because I'll never get over the officiating on that play. Defensively, not so much. It just didn't feel like they got dominated defensively. It just felt like they just got taken advantage of on some key downs. Some young players making mistakes. But part of it is the way you have to play Jaden Daniels because he's so deadly. Giants came out running the ball like crazy in the first half. Daniel Jones has 0 passing yards. The second half, they find success in the passing game, got a couple touchdowns and a field goal. But at the end of the day, the Giants just weren't good enough.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with the whole point of them getting... I think they did get dominated defensively. I think they have a problem of, they're an undisciplined team that they don't do the little things right. And if they did the little things right, then odds are the Giants are walking away from more football games this year as winners, offensively and defensively. And this was a game where offensively they did some good, positive, and productive things, and then defensively, this is a week that they didn't do many positive and productive things really at all. They didn't force a ton of negative plays. They had 0 sacks. Jaden Daniels is tough to get on the ground. That's part of facing the Commanders these days. So I actually have way more qualms with the defense and way more frustrations with the defense walking out of this than like the offense and Daniel Jones.
The offense played a fine
like
game. If the Giants held the Commanders to 21 points, they lose this game. Giants 22, Commanders 21. We're not talking about the negatively at the offense at all. To me, the offense did their job in this game. Let's look at now, not fully, right? You have that strip sack, but their drives were a 3 and out, a strip sack, a touchdown, the punt, and then in the second half, field goal, touchdown. They scored on 4 of 7 drives, and then the one field goal drive was the offensive pass interference that took the touchdown off the board. The offense did their job in this game. Defensively, they didn't. It was about the key downs, third downs. 33% of the Commanders' passing yards came off of 4 Jaden Daniels third down passes.
Yeah.
In this game. The end, just key mistakes and key moments. It felt like when I say they didn't get dominated, they did play very badly, but this wasn't like the last game where the Commanders didn't punt and they averaged 6 yards per carry. Like they averaged less than 4 yards per carry on the ground game. It was just when they needed a key play, they got it every time. So I guess it was a little bit of semantics, but the defense is the reason the Giants lost this game. When it's been vice versa the majority of the season.
Yeah, and the Commanders' offense is good, and then Jaden Daniels is good for a very specific reason. Do you want to fully start off with the defense? Because I feel like I'm holding back some talking points that I have because I don't want to fully start off with the defense unless you want to go there first.
I like talking about the offense first.
I know.
Hit me with what you got then. How about that?
Yeah. You talked about third down, and third down was very important in this game for the Giants and the Commanders. But the story that I do want to tell is first and second down. Because there were a lot of plays in this game where the Giants actually had, like on first down, they would create a positive play. I'm going to go through this and hear me out. Just hey, hang on tight. Justin's going to talk for a little bit, and it's going to be recapping kind of what happened. And I'm going to go through specifically the scoring drives that the Commanders had, their touchdowns and their field goals. I mean, they only punted twice in this game. And only 8 possessions. This was a very low possession game for both teams. Not a ton of possessions. So on the touchdown drive, and not the touchdown drive. I'm skipping to the second quarter, where the Commanders had a 13-play, 70-yard drive. First and 10, they get a 9-yard run. Second and 1, easy conversion. First and 10, they have a 16-yard pass. First down. Next play, 3-yard pass. And then on second and 7, a 20-yard run. Boom, you avoid third down like that. First and 10, 9-yard pass. Boom, you're effective on early downs. Third and 2, they get a 1-yard run. So, okay, this is the fourth down conversion. Fourth and 1, easy picking, 6-yard run. And then they eventually get a second and 1 touchdown up the middle for Austin Eckler for 1 yard. Their next drive, after the Giants go 5 plays for 2 yards, they wind up punting. The Commanders have a 14-play, 97-yard drive. They get to a second and 4 after a 6-yard run. They avoid third down by a 7-yard run. The Giants force a negative play on first and 10, but then on second 11, they allow a 31-yard pass. They force another negative play on first and 10. They get a 6-yard pass, a 5-yard pass on third and 6. Fourth and 1, 1-yard run. So basically, the whole game is like this, Bobby. The whole game is like this. And then even including a third and 18 with 20 seconds left, I think we can even talk about this play. The 24-yard pass on a third and 18, and then you have the Terry McLaurin 18-yard touchdown. The whole game was like this, where the Commanders did an awesome job of just avoiding third down. If they got to third down, it was a third and 1. And then the Giants, what they didn't do is they didn't reward themselves when they had a third and long, whether it's a third and 18, there was a third and 8 later in the game too. They just did not reward themselves for good defense by missed tackles, allowing big plays, and that's how you say, that's how the game kind of changed itself on third down, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the third and 18 screen at the end of the half. Drew Phillips has him. They're, going to kick a field goal at bet. Actually, no, they weren't. I don't think they were even going to kick a field goal. They were pretty far back.
They were far away from it.
Yeah, so like they end up instead of you go into the half 14-7, or maybe you get some type of miraculous play or 2 big plays or something, and you kick a field goal, but 14-7 at the worst. Instead, they're getting a touchdown off over Deonte Banks the next play. Drew Phillips misses a tackle. There was another big Drew Phillips miss sack that he had in this play. Deonte Banks giving up that touchdown. It was just continued mistakes. Tyler defensively. Nubin, they're in too high on 3rd and 9 for a field goal drive, and you just have no one covering Austin Eckler underneath. It just felt like little mistakes led to big plays over and over again in key moments. And then in the end of the game, they just were leaning on them in the run game. Like, they weren't having dominant rushing success, but they handed the ball off 15 times for 65 yards in the second half. Yeah. Just getting some gritty yards out of them.
And this is just I think this is kind of what the Commanders have been doing all year, where it's like you look at Jaden Daniels' third down numbers and you look at Jaden Daniels' EPA per play wise, it's like, oh my God, look at how good Jaden Daniels' EPA per play. You want to know why? It's because, when they face third down, it's third and short. They're willing to go for it on fourth down. I think they're perfect on fourth down all year long, Bobby Skinner, because if you have a 4th and 1 and a 4th and 2, your odds of picking that up when you have a good rushing offense is pretty good. You have an offensive line that's leaning on people. You have the threat of Jaden Daniels' legs, which I'm pretty sure we saw on some late downs in this game as well. But then again, just shooting yourselves in the foot. As soon as you allowed that touchdown to make it 21-7, Bobby, at the end of the half, that's when you kind of knew, like, damn, this kind of feels like it's over, because the Giants were spamming the run, and when it's 21-7 coming out of the half, you're not really going to want to spam the run to start the second half when you're down by 2 scores, right? So that's when it kind of felt like it was over. The 24-yard pass to De'Ami Brown, 3rd and 18, is brutal. And then even, Bobby, you can allow a field goal there, and it instead of it being 21-7, it's, what would it be? It would be 17-7. And I guess, maybe you feel fine with that. But Deonte Banks with 11 seconds to go, and I couldn't believe. I'm sitting in the stands saying, I think Washington is really mismanaging the clock here because they had all these timeouts. They had all these timeouts that they weren't calling, and they were letting the clock roll down. I'm like, what? The Washington could possibly score here. Instead, they had the ball on the Giants' 18-yard line with 11 seconds to go. I'm like, why are they not calling timeouts? Lo and behold, it's an 18-yard touchdown, and Deonte Banks just the awareness to not keep McLaurin in front of you, to let him get behind you, the lack of awareness. I mean, forget making a play on the football. To not be aware of the situation on what's at stake there, unacceptable. It's really just,
and it is a mental
unacceptable.
mistake. Like we can talk about the ball. Like he does have a lack of ball. Deonte Banks does have a lack of ball skills, but that play is a mental mistake, right? And Jerome Henderson, I listened to his whole, media availability, and it was basically just 10 minutes talking about Deonte Banks and their expectations for him. And it's one thing when Amari Cooper just gets you on the sideline and a lack of ball skills, right? Like that's an issue, but that's a known issue. That is small details that lost that play. And something I've noticed with Deonte Banks, and if I was his defensive coach, I would stop cheating his leverage on that play because he had help inside. That was cover four deep coverages. You have help inside. So they cheat outside with his leverage on that play, right, Justin?
Yeah.
They cheat outside with his leverage on that play. So, but Terry McLaurin shows an inbreaker or, a post. So when Banks sees that, because he's cheating outside, he reacts like, I got to get there to be on the post, even though I have the help inside. And that gets his momentum going too far one way. And then they break back the other way and ends up being a touchdown. Like that just happened. Any time that he's cheating his leverage, he just doesn't trust it enough or trust his help enough. And it puts him in bad situations, and wide receiver ones have just been able to take advantage of him consistently because they know, like, all I got to do is throw a foot jab at him and he's going to be on his horse trying to go, and I'm going to work the other way. You saw Amari Cooper in that Browns game where you're like, oh my gosh, he had so much inside leverage and he gave up it. Yeah, because he had inside leverage. He's so worried about getting beat on the out route because he's given away that outside leverage that he gets on his horse to protect that, and then Cooper, works back inside. So it is just frustrating with Banks. And I know we talked about draft classes and stuff last week on the mailbag and talking about Joe Shane's job as a whole. But everyone talks about the 2022 class being bad, man. 23 is looking worse and worse by the day.
Yeah.
I actually think GMS has put together a couple of good games after struggling versus the Eagles. Actually, I don't think they even struggled that bad versus the Eagles. It was just that sack that I gave up to Nakobe Dean. But outside of that, you really don't have any contributors on this team. Or not contributors, but guys that are making a positive impact. Banks has been bad, man. He's given the most touchdowns in the NFL. JMS is JMS. Jalen Hyatt doesn't play at all. Eric Gray is a third-string running back. Trey Hawkins, Jordan Riley, and Javarius Owens are not really players on this team. None of those three were active. Javarius Owens isn't on the team anymore, and Hawkins and Riley were healthy scratches in this game.
Yep.
So you're just not getting any impact out of draft classes, and it leaves this team where it is. But the Banks one hurts, man, and I know I haven't been the biggest Banks fan in the world, but it's just like I'm hoping and waiting for it to turn around because he's a freaking talented player. He's a really talented player. And despite the fact that he gave up on some plays and got punished for it, I don't think he's this like problem teammate and he doesn't care and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like they are struggling with attention to detail type of plays. Now, I do want to come to his defense on one play. The slant that he gave up, the Terry McLaurin, that was actually on Drew Phillips. They were supposed to switch their coverage there, and you saw Banks did a good job of not throwing Phillips under the bus and his media availability, just been like, yeah, we got to be better as a team on that play. I got to be better. I got to make a better play. In reality, they're supposed to switch coverage. Phillips gets lost in man on his guy, and that's why Banks, if you watch on that play, you're like, okay, I understand if you get beat on this, but it looks like you're just not trying to fly to the ball and get leverage on this. He was expecting Drew Phillips to take that over, and he didn't.
Yeah.
And had a good, actually kept his head on a swivel a little bit to realize that and try and make a play at the end of it. But again, he's been a disadvantage every week except for the Seahawks game this year for the Giants.
Yeah. So I want to talk about some defensive stats, and this is heading into Week 9, by the way. But I'll touch on this with the whole secondary, because one of the stats that I have is the Giants have the 6th least amount of passes defended, and this is heading into Week 9. I don't know what the game book says the Giants have in terms of PDs this past week, but I think it just goes to show. I mean, even Cordell Flott on the pass interference that got called on him early in the game. I feel like that was kind of a ticky-tacky call, but Cordell Flott doesn't turn his head. If Cordell Flott turns his head to possibly play the football, then I don't think that's called, because you have both guys that are kind of hand-fighting. I think it was Noah Brown. Both guys kind of hand-fighting. If Cordell Flott's able to turn his head and try and make a play on a football, even though that ball was kind of clearly, nobody was catching that football, which the NFL is very... The NFL doesn't care.
The uncatchable. They never. Belichick talked about it a couple weeks ago. Make it uncatchable. That way, he was not catching that football. They don't care. But the NFL officials don't care about that clearly. So if Cordell Flott doesn't turn his head, they call the pass interference. Everybody in the stadium erupts, be like, "That's not PI." But then I'm standing there saying, "Well, if we have a corner that could finally learn to turn their head and make a play on a football, then maybe that's not a PI." And it's the same thing with Deontay Banks and the lack of awareness and everything like that. Our guy Jake Barrow and Do a Barrel Roll has talked about this, and I'm on board. I'm not thrilled with Jerome Henderson anymore. There was a certain point where I was happy with Jerome Henderson. Jerome Henderson does a good job of, whenever the Giants sign a guy off the street, and getting them ready to go and putting them in good spots and not compromising situations. Name me the Giants cornerback that they've drafted. Maybe it's a shame that Aaron Robinson, kind of goes down, and we never know what he would turn into. But the Giants have drafted a good amount of corners under his kind of tutelage. And name me the corner that's taken steps up, and name me the corner that can turn their head and make a play on a football under Jerome Henderson. That's been a young guy. I don't think there is one. Right? They've drafted, 5 guys under him? Darnay, Aaron Robinson, Rodarius Williams, Flott, Banks, and Hawkins, right? I guess that's 6.
Some of those picks, I mean, not all. Some of them are
okay,
like day
but which
3.
one? Banks is the one, right? Flott is 160 pounds. He's actually handled his own. Like, Banks has made plays on the football. Hasn't gotten a bunch of interceptions in his career, only a couple. But Flott, for being a 160-pound guy, I think he's done well out on the outside for the most part, even though I don't think he's a piece that you build on. Banks is really the only one. Robinson has never played. Rodarius Williams is a 6th-round pick. Another guy they had ready to play
Hawkins,
whenever
day
needed.
3.
Hawkins is a 6th-round pick. I don't think Jerome Henderson is this miracle worker. Banks is the key one, but at the end of the day, I've seen Fabian Moreau come and have a good year, and Isaac Yiadom come and play well, and Greg Stroman get thrown out there on the fly and be able to. So, having bad. I mean, think about 2019, man. Guys just get picked on, right? Antonio Hamilton, DeAndre Baker. We don't really have those guys who get picked on like that, where it's just all over a game. So I'm not fully on board on that, but Banks has not developed.
Yeah,
Banks
I just wish
like
it happened. Too. I just wish it happened with the draft pick. That's my only damn. I'm glad we could sign these guys and bring it, and that's why I'm
sure. But we had these worries with Banks regardless when they drafted him.
Right. But that's why I'm all for this argument of, and this is just a philosophical thing of, I do not want to spend high leverage draft picks on corners. I want to spend so much cap space on corners, because the veterans that what you're getting out of, and even if it doesn't work out, you sign him for 2 or 3 year deals, and then he can get out of it instead of a 4-year investment that you just kind of have to live with it. I am all for putting so much cap space and putting so much investment in corners, secondary, specifically outside corners. I am all for that. And, that's kind of just more of a philosophical thing. Because clearly we've seen that Jerome Henderson works with those guys a little bit better. So that's that.
Just start drafting better. How about that, Joe?
How about
Shane?
that? How about that?
Why don't you talk to us about something? Because I feel like we should actually get into the flow of the offense, because I thought that told the story.
I'm
of the
gonna,
game.
and I do want to talk about the run defense a little bit.
I do too, but I want to talk about this offense.
Got it. Cool. So let's talk about Corona. You know what I always try to be, a fan that never loses, never lost. Some saying. Here's what I mean. We know those New York Football Giants. They don't win every single week, but even when they lose, I'm loving the game. You know Eli Manning? Yeah, the Giants quarterback, future Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer. You see him on those Corona commercials all the time because Eli's the GOAT. Eli knows the best beer around town, and that's Corona Extra. Because whether it's a deep ball that Eli's thrown or some third and short conversions that Wando Robinson's catching, or just a great tailgate out in the parking lot in L16, there's always something to cheer for. And the best beer to pair with those awesome moments, it is Corona. It's all about finding the maximum amount of joy within every moment of the game, win or lose, at home or on the road or in Germany next Sunday morning. Wake up 9:30 a.m. It's perfect beer to go along with watching football and all the moments that come with it. So cheers to everyone who loves the game beyond the scoreboard. Corona, for the fans who never lose. Get yours at ordercorona.com for 21 plus. Relax responsibly. Corona Extra beer, imported by Crown Imports in Chicago, Illinois. Bobby Skinner, you'd be glad you did. Did you unwind with the Corona today at any point?
I did. When the game was over, and I was like, all right, let me throw on the end of the NASCAR race. That's how I find my beach is after the Giants game, cracking open a Corona, and then getting back to rewatching the game.
I'm sorry if I hijacked the show by talking about undisciplined defense for 20 minutes, but
it's okay. It's not the worst hijacking ever.
oh boy,
that was an awful joke, Bobby. Why would I say that? But I do want to talk about the offense. Because they came out just freaking running, dude. Like just hand the ball off. It didn't work as good in the second half, but they threw the ball well in the second half. Like this is the stats in the first half. Daniel Jones 4 of 6, 0 yards, 1 touchdown.
Hell yeah,
and 1 sack. And then the rushing totals were 21 carries for 142 yards. Jones 5 for 50, Tracy 10 for 50. Singletary 5 for 31, and my favorite one was Darius Slayton 1 for 11 because they were running wing T tackle trap.
That was awesome.
It was my favorite play to run in high school. And you look at this offensive game, and it's again 3 and out the first drive. Then you have the strip sack where they're freaking handing it off, the touchdown, punt, and then the second half field goal, touchdown the second half. The fumble play. So Chris Hubbard is obviously really bad in pass protection. He is making a difference in why this team can actually run the ball, though. They've ran the ball 164 yards and 157 rushing yards the last 2 weeks. Commanders a bad rushing defense, but the Steelers were the number 2 run defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
He is making a difference. But it's like the 4th time DJ's taken a hit on a screen the last 2 weeks because of Chris Hubbard as well. His feet are just so slow when it comes to that, where it's like just occupying for a bit, and the screen would have hit. And so DJ, I think he needs to just take the sack, but I'm not going to lose my mind on him just trying to get the ball out for a screen. So again, if you've listened to this show for a long time, it's very rare we'll come on here and harp on a referee's decision. Even if we don't like something, we'll talk about it and go on. Like the offensive pass interference on Slayton late in the game. Disagree with it, but I'm not going to harp on it. They might have given us a first down earlier in the drive. I'm in shock. Like they came back from the TV, Justin, and I was in shock that the Commanders had the football. They were blowing the whistle. That ball is popped out, right? They're all running after it, right? Like running after it. The ball's been out for a while at this point because it wasn't just quick bang bang, balls on the ground, fumble recovery. The referee is blowing the crap out of his whistle, which there is a difference between a, plays over whistle and a stop going after the football whistle. And that's exactly what it was. And Singletary lets up. Now, I still think Singletary needs to jump on that ball regardless because you're better safe than sorry. I know you don't want to get, put on the bottom of a dog pile, but get on that football. That giving them the football is insanity when you are blowing the piss out of that whistle, saying the play is over, and then more in the football. Like I don't know how they can defend that. And the rules analyst on TV, Mike Pereira, did defend it because that's what they fucking do because they're shills.
Well, what was the explanation for putting the ball at the Giants' 31-yard line? Because Jones fumbled it. Where did he fumble it exactly? I have it right here. Jones fumbled it at Washington's 29-yard line. This was a 6-play, 55-yard drive where they were kicking ass. And this is also on Dable. Why the, your fucking 4-yard run, 10-yard run, 24-yard run, 15-yard run, 10-yard run. Why are you fucking throwing it?
Because it was a screen and it was going to work if Chris Hubbard doesn't have the worst block ever.
Yeah,
you can't do that.
Nitpicking. But I'm a frustrated fan. But why? What was the explanation on the broadcast for? Because I understand you come back from commercial break. I guess they challenge it. They wind up challenging it. You come back from commercial break. It was clearly a Daniel Jones fumble. But since the play was called dead, Bobby, why did Washington start the ball at the Giants' 31-yard line when Jones fumbled it on Washington 29? That's what I don't understand.
None of it makes sense. It's an egregious call. It's bullshit.
Because then why not just call it a touchdown?
Well, then they could just say, because they did play it dead, because the whistle was blown, that none of the other players went to try and tackle him. But you blew it dead well before. Okay, I understand that rule because they have that rule, Justin, because there's times where they blow a play dead, but they're literally like on a dog pile for the football. Or, you hear, and then there's a player jumping on top of it, and they review it. That was plays blown dead, Singletary's sitting there, and then he pulls up because they blow the piss out of the whistle. Like, how even if you thought, like, part of that rule, how does the referee not see the review and see that this player clearly pulled up because of my whistle? That's ridiculous. Like that's, I know they do checks on Monday morning and shit like that. Like that's unbelievable. Like I was shocked. Like I couldn't believe it. Now I'm not I'm not living and dying right now with what the Giants record is at the end of the year. But if I was, that would be first thing we talk about on the show if the Giants were, 5-4 or 6-3 at this time. Like that's unexcusable type of shit for those referees, and it drives me nuts how they get away with it. Forget the bad DPI on Flawed and the bad OPI on Slayton. Like that's just an insane shit that drives me nuts.
Yeah, the OPI on Slayton I thought that was bad. I mean that was bad too, and they've been bad all year. They've been bad all year. I did have a thought. I did have a thought when what was the previous game that we played before Washington? I forgot.
I'm gonna let you figure this one out.
Patreon, help me out. I forgot. I forgot what game we played. Just 7 days ago.
Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you this. You're gonna have to figure it out on your own.
Hold on.
Don't look it up.
It was the Steelers. But there was a point where I was watching some game recently, and I had a boomer thought. And the boomer thought was, I actually think the officials are impact my enjoyment on watching the game of football. And I have never had that thought before. Never. And you if you've listened to us for years, there are certain times where refs make game-changing calls, and we come on here and we don't talk about it for a second because we usually don't typically care about it. But it's been bad this year, man, and especially the fact that it shoots us in the foot very particularly. The things that the referees are choosing to care about this year, ineligible man downfield on these RPOs, they're paying way more attention to it it feels like since Brian Dable was hired in 2022, they're paying way more attention to that stuff.
It's one thing for them to make mistakes in the moment when you do, but that fumble call is that's just incompetence right there.
I just don't understand why the ball goes from the Giants the Washington 30-yard line, and then it goes to the Giants 30-yard line when the play was immediately called dead. I don't understand the thought process in that.
Yeah,
because then there was no explanation.
Yeah,
there was no explanation at the stadium. So,
but overall for the offense, I thought this was their best game since Seattle, which is not a high bar. Obviously, they've been scoring single-digit points in a lot of these games. But they just came out running it. And I think Chris Hubbard makes a difference. But part of that is you saw that it's practice. Like a run game is not something that you just do. Right? You don't just install running plays and do it. It's something that you instill, how you run the ball. And I think the Giants have made an emphasis on that. realizing that we can't just, because, at one point of the year, DJ was like throwing the ball. He had like the third most passing attempts in the entire NFL. Like, that's just not a recipe for success. And then when Andrew Thomas goes out, you clearly have to change your approach. And so I'm glad that Dable has done that in that sense, where they did run the ball. Again, 21 carries for 142 yards in the first half. A couple of those are DJ scrambles, but still, like, I like and enforcing that. And it led to offensive success outside the strip sack. Scored a touchdown. Yeah, they were kicking ass on that play, and then they punt. And then the second half of the game, like, you could see the impact it made on the Commanders, the way that they were playing the run, and the Giants were able to score on all three drives in the second half, and should have scored more because it should have the touchdown on the Slayton OPI. What do you think about? I know what you think about this, but I actually got a little fired up about it. Giants score a touchdown. They're down 14. They score a touchdown. They go for 2.
Yeah, you have to go for 2 in that scenario.
You don't have to. Don't have to.
Sure.
But I'm actually a little bit fired up about this because it's something that makes sense specifically for the Giants. When people the argument against it, because there is some people who are just still dumbfounded when that happens. Like, it's been happening since 2018. Pat Shurmur did it Monday Night Football versus the Falcons.
Well, timeout. Was the first 2-point conversion when Daniel Jones rolls out to his right?
Yes, and I want to talk about that.
What I don't understand is, and this is with any football coach in any scenario in any offense. When you're in the red zone and there's a lack of space, why would you therefore go forward and eliminate more space by rolling out to your right and eliminating half the field? I will never understand that, specifically doing it in the red zone. Doing it on third down, doing it on a third and short, where there is more space and there's more space to account for on a football field, yes. But doing it inside the red zone and eliminating half the football field when you're already low on space drives me crazy.
Oh, I talk about it all the time. It kills me as soon as it happens. As soon as I see the ball snap and DJ start to sprint out, I'm like, why? Why do we only run these types of plays when when it's do or die? They did it on fourth down last week and it worked. And then on the second 2-point conversion drove me nuts. They put Malik Nabers on a fade, which I hate the fade, but if you're gonna throw it, throw it. And then Slayton had the concussion protocol at that point. I don't know if he actually has one. There's no protocol. So Hyatt's in with Wandale. They have Wandale run a choice, which teams are so ready for that. And then they have Hyatt just kind of run to the back of the end zone to try and clear space for the Wandale Robinson choice route. And then they keep in 7. Like, that's bullshit play calling, right? And that's where we've talked about on mailbags after we go and watch film and all that shit. So it's like, this is where I think the biggest negative for Dable has been this year is the lack of red zone offense, right? That was something that was a huge success for them under Kafka in 2022, and I think that's been noticeably lacking under Brian Dable.
I agree.
But the argument, Justin, has been not just against the philosophy of going for 2, even though it's pretty widely accepted at this point. The argument has been, well, the Giants' offense is a bad red zone offense. They're not good. They're not. How can you trust this offense? That's the exact point. That's exactly why you should do it. Because what do you think is more likely? That the Giants just scored this touchdown. They scored another. They're going to score another touchdown without the Commanders scoring any points, and then they're going to stop the Commanders again from scoring any points, and then the Giants are going to go score a touchdown, or a field goal. Like, that's just so much more or less likely than getting the first 2-point conversion. It's just way more or less likely, and I think it even makes it easier when you have a kicker who has not kicked in a competitive game since 2022, and he lost his job at Rutgers last year as a place kicker, and Jude McAtamney. And even though he made his kicks out there, it's the exact reason why. And the argument against it, all it does is make the Giants lose by 3 points instead of 5. Now, I think the Giants spread this week was +4, and that might influence a couple people's anger and a little bit. But to me, it's with how bad the Giants' offense is and the way the Commanders' offense, to me, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And you know me, I like the people who like the fourth down bots and the every fourth down you should go it and win pro. Like that drives me nuts. It drives me nuts when it's just like, okay, well, you guys just think you should go for it on every fourth down. The team doesn't matter. And the argument of like the decision, don't like the play call. It's like, well, that's part of not going for a fourth down. Is because you may call the wrong play. There is a chance of failure. But to me, this is a no-brainer. This isn't a go for it on fourth down, trust the analytics thing. This is I trust my team to get 2 yards on this play rather than go score another touchdown and then my defense makes 2 stops and then we score another touchdown on top of that.
It's also I think it's also not about not trusting your defense either. Where, I mean, you just saw how effective the Commanders were on early downs. If the Giants made a stop, I said it earlier in the show in a long-winded rant about it. Even if the Giants were good on first down, the Commanders would get 9 yards on second down, and then it's a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1, and then they would just pick it up. And that was the main difference between the Giants and the Commanders is the Commanders were kind of moving the ball at will when they needed to, and the Giants, how many 3rd and longs did they face? I mean, they were pretty good on third down. I think third down conversion-wise, they were better than the Commanders. But
they were really good on third down.
How many 3rd and longs did they face? And it was just one of those things of the Commanders were going station to station, and the Giants were clearly, I mean, if you watch the flow of that game, the Commanders were in full control of that game, even when it was, the margin was down to 1 score or 6 points or 5 points, whatever. Commanders had complete control of that game. So if the Giants could have used math to their advantage of being down by 8 and then going for 2 and then being down by 6, I'm all for that. And trying to sneak smartly and intelligently sneaking a win that way, I'm all for that. And even if you're playing well, and even if the offense is playing well, I think that's also another reason. Like, hey, go for the win. You believe in yourself to get those 2 yards. I think it works both ways. Whether our offense isn't doing that well. Our offense can't score consistently. I think that's a reason to go for 2 and be aggressive. And
yeah,
even
that's
when
the
your
main
offense,
reason for me.
And even when your offense is doing well, I think that's also a reason to go for 2. Because you want to know why at the end of the day, Bobby? It's 2 freaking yards. It's 2 yards, bro. It's 2 yards.
Well, I don't want to say that minimalizing the how hard it is to do that, especially with the Giants offense, but it's just so much harder to get all those other things to go right, and you just basically play perfect on offense and get the opportunity to get the ball back. I mean, I think
that's my main point.
Like, they didn't even get the opportunity to get the ball back. And then it's like, all right, then let's say you do tie it up, right? Well, then you're hoping you win the coin toss in overtime. Yeah. So there's just a lot of shit with it. Some offensive, again, the run game, I hope we continue to see that. And
yeah.
Theo Johnson.
Do you want to talk about something first before we talk about Theo?
Because I do want to talk about Theo. But what I want to talk about first is Shady Rays. Get ready for the season with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that will break the bank. They won't rob the bank like Ricky either. Shady Rays is an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. That sounds like the Talking Giants Apple Podcast reviews. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. And I'm kind of an outdoor adventure kind of guy, Justin.
Yes, you are.
I need them, right? I found an old video of us doing dry ice bombs. Guess what are on the top of my head? Shady Rays. Shady Rays. You got to protect your eyes from the shrapnel. Whether it's the beach, going hiking, whatever you're doing, it's going to get a little cold. You don't want the reflection from the snow. All that type of stuff. You need Shady Rays. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. It's truly insane. Every pair is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, exchange for a new pair, return worry-free within 30 days. This was the main thing for me, Justin. because I'm a big lose my sunglasses type of guy, and it's like, I can't really invest in anything because I just lose them. But guess what? With Shady Rays, you don't got to worry about that. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code GIANTS for 50% off 2+ pairs of polarized sunglasses. And that offer applies to the custom Jimmy and Jake collab shades. So go get yours now. You'll be glad you did. Theo Johnson.
Yes.
Good stuff, especially at the end of the game. Bad stuff. Here's why I view it as a little bit of a sign of encouragement, because we hadn't really seen DJ pull the trigger on giving him the ability to make some big body plays. But today he didn't, right? He had 2 drops, the seam up the seam on the left sideline where DJ throws it for him to turn and make a play on it. He should make a play on it. He doesn't. And then he just had a basic drop on the over route. So that kind of got into why isn't he playing? Why is Daniel Bellinger not playing over this guy? Because Daniel Bellinger played the year the Giants won, and that makes us think of good times. Daniel Bellinger doesn't get to run these types of routes. Like, he's just not the type of athlete and doesn't have the size that Theo Johnson has. So you're not running these routes. Now, that being said, Daniel Bellinger does have much better hands. Like, that's Bellinger's best thing as a pass catcher, is he catches everything that you throw his way. The issue is you're just not throwing anything past 8 yards down the field when it comes to Daniel Bellinger. And the tiebreaker should be that Theo Johnson's a better inline blocker than Daniel Bellinger. That's the reality. If the Giants trying to run, and then you can put Theo Johnson on these crossers, and while he did drop 2 plays today, I hope that God drops aren't a huge issue for the rest of his career. They weren't an issue at Penn State. Let's just hope that this is, been I think this probably his third and fourth drops of the season today. So it's been an issue this year. Let's hope it doesn't continue to be an issue. But if anything, it's a little encouraging, because it's like, okay, we do have a tight end who we can throw back shoulder seams to, and that touchdown that you got to him. And, think of the ability to box out against the Eagles on the play that was called OPI. Like, that, not every tight end can do that. Daniel Bellinger can't do those type of things. And then the reality is Theo Johnson's a much better inline blocker than Bellinger. Bellinger's a better move blocker, but Theo Johnson's a better inline blocker, and that just helps the Giants in their run game so much more.
Yeah, I'm encouraged by Theo.
Yeah, so I'm encouraged. Hopefully he doesn't get discouraged by the drops, because I actually think that him, being in position to catch that seam and the over routes, that can create more opportunities for him to go. Now, he's not been super productive in the receiving game this year, but you've seen the flashes of it, right? Where you never saw those flashes with Daniel. And I don't mean this to be a put down on Bellinger. Bellinger's someone you could put out on the field. You can run those short routes. You can, move him around in the backfield. He's more versatile, to put in the backfield and stuff. But just playing wide tight end, Theo Johnson gives you more.
It was that crosser, that over route that got a yell out of me.
Oh, yeah, that's just really bad. The seam hurt me a little more, because if he catches that, that's why you like Theo Johnson so much.
That would have been a sick catch, though. I thought that ball was coming in hot, and Theo's got to really contort his body to get that. But
that's what you want Theo Johnson to be.
Yeah, for sure. It was the over that crossing pattern, the over route that got me, because I think that's yards after the catch potential too, where maybe you could be a big body and you could put out a stiff arm and you're not falling down right away. It just would have been an opportunity to see Theo out in space and maybe see that athleticism and stuff that we haven't seen yet. It would have been an opportunity for Theo Johnson to get the ball in a scenario which he has not gotten it yet, and it would have been interesting to see what he could do with it. And that was a good ball that Jones threw too, in a spot where he could catch it. So and getting yards after the catch too, which is rare for Daniel Jones. Him setting up his receivers for him actually to get yards after the catch. It's rare for Jones to do.
Yeah,
usually they're all falling down. Yeah, he's got to catch it.
Hopefully drops aren't a problem. And then DJ overall, I thought he played well today. You had the seam to Theo Johnson. Chris Manhertz getting his third touchdown of his career. That was nice. I know it's a little 1-yard pass, but he did put it where only Manhertz can get it. Manhertz makes a play on it. With throwing the ball to Slayton and Nabers, allowing those guys to make some plays down the field. What was his stats? I know he didn't have any. It was funny. He had 0 yards in the first half. He finishes at 20 of 26, 174 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I thought this was the best his legs looked all year at the zone read for 24 yards. And then when they had that Wan'Dale Robinson screen on first down that was 6-yard loss, he got some yards back on that, made him able to convert on third down. Another zone read. And then the touchdown run. I almost forgot about the touchdown run where he just runs through a couple of guys.
Trucked 2 guys. That was awesome. That was awesome.
So, and nothing crazy in the passing game, but hit Theo up the seam. Was able to find Nabers, majority of the time, hit Slayton for a few passes down the field. It was, again, nothing special, but for the standard that for what the last few weeks has been, I actually thought this was his second best game of the year. I thought this game was better than the Browns game, actually. Even though they beat the Browns. Yeah,
it's just unfortunate that another game where there's one pass play of over 20 yards, and that was the Theo Johnson 35-yard touchdown. His CPOE was really good, but Bobby, I just watch games, and there's plenty of formations, and there's plenty of times where I'm like, the Giants could take a shot here. Where teams stack the box, they play single high. So sometimes with Daniel Jones, it's not the plays that he does make, it's the plays that aren't made, and it's just the opportunities that could be there to throw the ball deep down the field. And this Giants
are playing off coverage the majority of the game, though.
Yeah, I don't know. From what I was seeing, and hey, you could watch it with eyes that are different than mine with the all 22, but I have that perspective. The game during game days, it's not just the stuff that is made and the plays that are made on Sundays, but I feel like with Daniel Jones's career, it's the plays that aren't made. And
I'm not talking about Daniel Jones' career. I'm talking about this one game versus the Commanders.
No, I'm also talking about this one game of, you had one pass play of 20 plus yards, and that's just not going to win football games in 2024. It wasn't a bad game. He had a good game.
Was there a single play that you remember where it's like this was an opportunity for a shot and he didn't take it?
There are just formations. There are just formations where they're playing single high and they're begging the Giants to run deep concepts or throw deep concepts, and they just don't do it.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. Do you have anything else on Daniel Jones?
No. Had a good game.
JMS is putting together a couple of good games. I thought he looked really good in the second level in the run game. Chris Hubbard is frustrating because, again, I think Chris Hubbard has made a true difference in the run game. It's just in the pass game, he is a total liability, and you've seen that for 2 weeks. He gave up 11 pressures versus the Steelers, and then gave up the strip sack. I think Azudu actually does offer more as a pass protector, but I don't. For the Giants, I think they need to be leaning into their run game, which you saw them do. So play the tackle who gives you an advantage at least one thing. Where Azudu is not an advantage at either. He's just not going to lose consistently as a pass blocker. He's not going to lose 8 times out of 10. He's going to lose 4 times out of 10, which is still really bad, and those are going to be disaster plays as well. So I would continue to play Chris Hubbard. But defensively, it's really hard now that Jaden Daniels has really, again, I think we talked about in the preview pod, I think he's really progressed since week 2. And it's just hard to play Jaden Daniels, man, because you can't just pin your ears back and rush him. Because then if you start rushing and you got Brian Burns and Azeez Ojulari trying to work the corner, he's gonna take off and run. And they double team Dexter Lawrence every single time. And Dexter Lawrence has not done anything in these Commanders games. Biotish and whoever they double with him has done a really good job compared to some other teams. And it's just like when that happens, it's like, okay, well, if he's not going to take off and run, you let him sit in the pocket. He made some big boy throws, he ripped that ball to Noah Brown over Micah McFadden's head and he covered 2, right? Makes a play like that. Reading the way the defense is playing, check that ball down to Eckler on that play. And then when they do blitz, Drew Phillips comes as a free rusher, makes him miss. He's just playing in control and confident, and it's just hard to defend against that guy. And then when, he makes making that throw to McLaurin, not a lot of quarterbacks are even attempting that throw. Your comments on DJ, I'm not expecting DJ to throw the corner on that throw. I think I'm expecting him to either check it down or throw the ball out of bounds. So it's just, it's really hard to play him, and when the Giants corners aren't playing great in man coverage, it's just a tough spot to be in. Like, so they did play a lot of zone because they wanted to keep Jaden in front of him, but when you're playing zone coverage, it's hard to really get after the rush, after the passer, and they did a good job of like protecting him. And it's just you can't rush full on Jaden Daniels because of how he'll beat you with his legs.
Yeah, that's a good call talking about the throw to McLaurin before the end of the half because, we talked about there's 11 seconds left. I believe they're at the Giants 18-yard line, and there's a lot of quarterbacks that are probably just like, yeah, I'm going to take it to the half. Hey, it's great that we're going to get 3 points before the end of the half, and we're going to get the ball to start the second half. And nah, man, he sees an opportunity to put the ball over, put the ball in the end zone, and he does it. And instead of it being a 17-7 game at halftime, it's 21-7, and they're getting the ball back to start the second half with all the momentum under their belt. So he's dangerous, and I'm pretty sure the Giants are leading the league in sacks. At least heading into this game, they had a sack rate of over 10%. No, I'm sorry, they did have a lot of sacks. They had 4 or 5 sacks during their first matchup. But Dexter Lawrence does not have a sack against the Commanders this year in 2 games. Brian Burns, no sacks. Azeez Ojulari / Kayvon Thibodeau, no sacks. All the sacks came from Pinnock, who had 2. Okereke had 1. McFadden had 1. And I think Drew Phillips might have had 1 too. So I think, again, it just goes to show how slippery and how dangerous he is, that unless you could just get a clean hit on him and a untouched pressure, he's going to extend plays, he's going to run around, and he's going to limit those negative plays. And it's limiting those negative plays. I feel like it's been part of what Washington has done so well this year. And if anything, this game made me a little bit more frustrated with the Giants' run defense, and
their run defense just sucks.
I know, and like, I have numbers on it.
They've been an awful run defense, and this was coming out of. Was it coming out of the Bengals game? Yeah, it was coming out of the Bengals game, going to the Eagles game, where I'm like, I know we're all really high on this Giants defense right now. My worry about them is the fact that they've just played 3 teams who are not just bad rushing teams; they have no desire to run the ball, and that is to me what looks like the weakness of this defense. And you've seen it 3 weeks in a row, where the Eagles, the Steelers, and the Commanders have just been able to run the ball and run it with volume. What the Commanders didn't dominate in the run game this week, but they didn't have Brian Robinson. They handed the ball they ran the ball 38 times for 149 yards. So it's 3.9 yards per carry, which is actually good, right? That'd be top half of the league, but 150 rushing yards in that game. Like, they were able to get their pops. They held them to a good amount of 1-yard runs, but they were able to get their 15-yard, 16-yard runs, 8-yard runs, 4-yard runs. They just were able to get those consistent pops throughout the game. And by the way, Chris Rodriguez, the stock has never been higher. Needs to handle his driving, but the stock has never been higher. But that's the issue with this Giants run defense. It's the corner talent, and they're a bad run defense. Whether that's on the defensive talent, whether it's the edge rushers, the lack of a defensive tackle next to Dexter Lawrence, the DBs, they are a flat out bad running defense.
Yeah, heading into Week 9, doesn't even count Week 9. They're last in yards per carry, 4th worst in yards before contact per attempt, 5th worst in yards after contact per attempt. They're 4th worst in EPA per rush per next gen. Now, they do have the 2nd most tackles for loss, and their stuff rate is middle of the pack too. So, you do see it. You even saw it against Commanders, where they stuffed them at the line on 1st and 10. But what hurts them is that on a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1, if you're not good on early downs, and if you're not good on 3rd down, and you get a 4th and 1, and even if it goes as a run stuff of 2 yards, well, it's still a first down for the Commanders. And I feel like that's why that yards per attempt was, even though it was 3.9 yards per carry, I feel like that's why it was kind of low, because they got all these 3rd and 1s and 4th and 1s that they were able to just successfully pick up. So I'm starting to get to the point where Wink Martindale came in, had a resume of having number 1 rushing defenses on his resume before he came to the Giants. Shane Bowen has had number 1 rushing defenses on his resume before he comes to the Giants, right? And both of these guys have had run defenses where they've been last in yards per carry on what feels like consecutive years now. Or I remember the first year of Wink Martindale was not good against the run. It has to be a personnel issue, right, Bobby? I feel like it has to be a personnel issue at this point, right?
Yeah. Their edges aren't great run defenders. They have nobody at that second defensive tackle spot. I mean, Armon Watts has basically took over defensive tackle 2 spot. And the linebackers haven't played amazing ball, and the DBs are pretty bad outside of Drew Phillips. So yeah, I do think it's a personnel issue, and I think it starts with the front 4 outside of Dexter Lawrence. Why don't you talk to us about something, and then I want to talk about Tankathon and Malik Nabers' comments.
Yeah, we got one more thing to talk about, and that's Captain Morgan, the official spice rum of the NFL. You know Captain Morgan. You love Captain Morgan. The NFL season is where legends are born on and off the field. Some are last second plays that turn the tide and change the team's destiny, while others are friends who follow the captain from within to make a regular get-together into the stuff of legends. So grab your crew, grab a captain and a cola, make it a story to remember, because legends start when you follow the captain. Visit followthecaptain.com for more. Please drink responsibly. Captain Morgan Rum Company, or Captain Morgan Original Spice Rum, 35% alcohol by volume. Captain Morgan Rum Company in New York. New York, Bobby Skinner, you will be glad you did.
Be glad you did. Giants have the worst record in the NFL, Justin.
So do a lot of other teams, I think.
All
right?
the Tank fans, that makes you a thumbs up. The bad news for them, they have the 7th pick in the NFL draft right now. And then there's still two, like, let's just say we fast forwarded to next week, and the Giants didn't play. Let's say next week was the Giants' bye week, and then the Dolphins and the Titans lost their games and fell to 2-7. They could have the 9th pick with the worst record in the NFL. There's currently 9 teams in the NFL with 2 wins this year. Kind of insane. And the Giants just have a really strong strength of schedule. You know, theirs is 538, and then the Patriots right now have the first pick at 2-7. We'll see, but that's there. I wanted to do quickly on Nabers' comments after the game, because it's something I want to talk about quickly. So Nabers, Duggan tweeted this out with the context of what they were asking, saying Malik Nabers had 30 catches for 320 yards and 3 touchdowns in his first 3 games before suffering a concussion in week 4. He has 20 catches for 171 yards and no touchdowns in 3 games since returning from a 2-game absence. Nabers said, I don't call the plays, so I don't know. Nabers said when asked if the early rushing success gave the offense a lift, because it worked. When you run the clock out in the first half, you're scratching in the second half to try to score points, as many as possible. As an offense, you've got to be versatile. You've got to be able to run. You've got to be able to pass. You can't pick between half and half what you want to do. But like I said, I'm not the play caller. So, second time in 3 weeks where it's like a little bit of finger pointing from Malik Nabers. And this is something. I think Dexter Lawrence should go and nip that in the bud. And I talked about this 2 weeks ago on the mailbag pod when he was talking about, I was open. And Dable was on his thing saying I was open. I don't even know if he'll hear the message from Dable, because Dable's the play caller, and he's talking about like issues there. Dexter Lawrence should go and talk. Dexter Lawrence is a great player who's been on this team for a long time, who's never been in a situation where you felt he was throwing anybody under the bus. He said he's called stuff out. Go talk to him. Say, what is the point of doing that? What is the point? Even if you believe it, what is the point of doing it? And the small potatoes right now, again, it's does that comment change anything? Nope. But why not use that little minuscule thing as a way to be like, hey, there's no reason to do that. Because I'm telling you, if you let that slide, then there'll be one 3 weeks from now that'll slide. And then you're going to have a situation 2 years from now where there's a complete throwing under the bus. And you have, the McKinney last year where him and Wink Martindale are butting heads. Like, this is a perfect, actually, I'm not glad this happened. But, like, we know this is the type of stuff you have to deal with. And the main root of this is all losing. The Giants are winning, none of this shit happens. So that's the main issue. So they need to figure out a fucking way to start winning games so we don't have to worry about stupid little shit like this. But this should be a good moment for Dexter Lawrence, who's a true leader on that team, a star player who deserves respect, not just a leader because, he's, the starting quarterback or he's the head coach, but someone who is respected on that team. Go and say, no need for that. No need for that. Just give him bullshit answers the same way Deontay Banks did, instead of throwing Drew Phillips under the bus for, messing up a coverage at the end of play. Guys will take the heat for their own stuff and move on. It doesn't help anybody to do that, because again, I'm not worried about that comment. What I'm worried about is down the road, are we dealing with something that becomes a fucking issue in the locker room?
Yeah, I feel like it's been Dex and Burns that have taken on the mantles of being the true like leaders of the locker room, right? Where Burns has kind of told people to, kind of held people accountable at times. Feel like Dex has. I think Runyon or Van Roten gave maybe a halftime speech at one point, or somebody said like, we suck, we got to be better, or gave like an impassioned speech to the offense. I feel like one of the offensive linemen did at one point. So, but yeah, it just feels right for Dex to go and do that. But kind of feels weird. Like I don't know if that's. I've appreciated some of the sound bites that Dex has said this year. Like, we suck, we got to get better, we got to start winning games. There's no excuses, and he sounded pretty dejected for a happy-go-lucky guy. But still, I don't know if that's like. Dex is probably not fully comfortable doing that, right? Like I can't see Dex. It's because I don't think that's who he is, but it's who he has to be on this team, right? I agree with you.
Yeah, I think he's got that in him. But anyways, all right, that's an episode. We'll be back on Wednesday for a mailbag pod. We'll see you then. And you got anything else?
No. See you Wednesday.
Right, we'll see you then. Until then, let's go Big Blue.